This is another video to just record a little bit of play and experimentation to start seeing what happens when I play around with different code. Again, these things might not be in our class demos, but they're things that you can refer to if you're looking to play around. And for this one, I'm going to play around a little bit with rotation. So let's get into our regular starting point here. Window width, window height, background 0. Double check that this all maps. Yep, good. So full screen, it's black already, good. All right, so now the thing that I want to do is I am going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to draw it where the cursor is, and initially I'm just going to have it rotate. Now, the thing that I need to do, so normally, we've been doing like mouse X, mouse Y, and then like 100 by 100, right? So here I would have a 100 by 100 pixel rectangle that follows the mouse, right? It's in the upper left-hand corner, just like we've been doing. I can change the rect mode to center. So now it centers the mouse on the position that we give it, right? This is the X position and the Y position. Now, if I want to rotate this, I have to do something a little bit different in processing than you might expect. So when you're drawing things, you'll notice here, like this is drawing the rectangle in relationship to the X and the Y position here. And that X and Y position is based on this point up here being 0, 0. So what I need to do in order to rotate this is I need to change where that point is. But let me show you kind of the wrong way to do it first. Okay, so I'm going to start a variable. I'm just going to call it rot, as in rotate, and I'm going to initialize it to 0. Now on each draw, I am going to increase this rotate variable by 2. I'm going to set the angle mode to degrees. So in processing by default, the angle mode is radians. And so you can set this to either radians or degrees. I like to work in degrees. My mind understands 0 to 360 much better than radians, which involves like trigonometry and utilizing pi. And you can look that up if you want to. But I set a angle mode to degrees. That way I'm just working with like the degrees that I understand. Like I know what 90 degrees is. I know what 100 degrees is. 180 degrees is. I know what 360 is, that kind of stuff. So then if I type out rotate, rot, my variable, right? This will be increasing. So this will be 2, then 4, then 6. So it will slowly rotate, but I want you to see how it rotates when I just do it this way. So when I hit refresh, you'll notice it's rotating around this point here. So even though it's positioning based on where my cursor is, there it comes around again, it's using the X and Y position of my cursor to position it. However, the point that it's rotating it around then is the 0, 0 of the browser. And you can kind of think about this as like when you use the rotate tool in like Illustrator or After Effects, you have that registration point and that's what it rotates around. So that's how this works too. The registration point, like the initial point that it's translated to, is what it rotates around, and by default that is 0, 0. So okay, kind of cool, sort of interesting, but not at all what I wanted. All right, I wanted the rectangle to just like rotate around the cursor itself. So the way that I do that is before I rotate it, I use the function translate to translate it to the X and Y position that I want first. Then I set the actual X and Y position of the rectangle to 0, 0. By default, it's almost like it's the other way, like translate 0, 0, and then rotate based on the mouse X and mouse Y is what's showing us this weird thing in the background. But translating it first to the X and the Y position and then rotating it is what will give us this, which is a bit more like what we were expecting. I also want to show you something else about how background works. So background 0, we're setting it right away. We draw the black background one time. If we draw a black background every time we draw the draw function, we don't get this layering up effect. So if you just wanted one rectangle to be drawing around, you can imagine like this is kind of how it's working. It's drawing a black rectangle that fills the entire screen, or the entire window, and then it draws the rectangle, and then it's drawing a full background and then the rectangle. So that's how this works, right? So if you want it to just be like a thing, or if you want to do new things each time you run draw, you can set the background to 0. One other kind of cool thing is that if you put in all the colors and the alpha, so 5, so this is on a scale of 0 to 100, I think. 0 to 100 or 0 to 255. Actually, I'm forgetting. So if you do this at a small number, like 5, what it does is it builds up and ends up giving you this kind of like fade out trailing effect, because each frame it's adding a 5% black frame to this. And so you end up with this sort of like trailing off. And if you make it bigger, it'll fade out faster. You can't really make it too much smaller because it ends up with this residue. But you can see here now you get this kind of like trailing effect because each square is having a transparent black box essentially like drawn over the whole window. But I just think that looks kind of cool. So then if we want to hook this up to our sound experiments, we can do something similar. So let's first import the sound. We've done that. And actually, yeah, let's run it again just so we don't forget. So we had to click the run button in order for it to bring the library into the HTML file, which it did. So now I can say let mic equals new p5.audio in mic.start. Then I have to add my mouse pressed function here for user start audio. And then I can say let amp equal mic.get level. And I could do something like, let's set the width to be kind of small, but then let's set the height to be, I don't know, like 1500 times amp. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, so I hit save, I hit refresh, double check real quick. Mic equals new, mic.start, amp, mic.level, user start audio when I click. Okay, so I hit allow, then I click. Yep, and so now I'm seeing this rectangle get bigger as I talk. Still pretty small. So your numbers will be different depending on like the sensitivity and the volume of your microphone. But you can see here, it's working. It's giving me a bigger, longer, taller rectangle. It's slowly rotating. If you want to adjust that rotation, it will go slower. If you make that number smaller, like you can make it even a fraction, so like half. Oh, here's another thing. If you do fractions, it wants a 0 before the period. That'll get rid of that little, like not an actual error, but like the orange is like a strong recommendation. So if I do 0.5, which is half, so now I can see it's rotating quite a bit slower, more slowly than it was before. And if I don't want that redrawing background, I can just comment that out so I can get a better sense of what this looks like as I move this around, as it rotates, as I talk. Another thing you can do, see how when I'm quiet, it goes like totally invisible, like you can't see it anymore? That's because the way that we are drawing the size here with this, 2500 times amp, if amp is nothing or if amp is really, really small, that number is really, really small. If we want to do something like have it so that at a minimum it would be like 5 pixels, what we can do is we could do 5 plus whatever the results of this are. So even if 2500 times amp results in it being like 0 or like 0.01 or something like that, it would still be like 5 plus 0, 5 plus whatever, very, very small number. So now when I run it, you can see at a minimum, my rectangle is now 5 pixels tall. So I've always got something there. Sometimes that's a little more satisfying. Right? So you can see that's drawing there. This is looking pretty cool. So I'm going to add my save function here. So we'll say key pressed if key code equals 32, save canvas, give it a file name. Make it like number 1. All right. So then I hit refresh. So now as I draw, as I talk, as I move, oh, I forgot to click first. There we go. Click, draw, move, sing the lyrics of your favorite song. You could start humming. There you go. Okay. So you draw some stuff, hit spacebar and save it. Cool. So that's rotation. That's using the mic to play with and determine the size of that rectangle. As you know, you can always play with these numbers. You can play with the fill. You can do all kinds of stuff to play around with different ways for this to show and rotate. And there you go. All right. Hopefully that's fun.